Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being with us today. Um, I started my business in 2004, so my schooling was before that. And even when I was in school way back then, I was all about using water efficiently. And people would look at me like, why? You know? And it wasn't popular then. And you may have heard the term hydrozone, and I'll be using that today too. But I was already all about that in my design. So it's been really exciting to me that I've been talking about these principles and practices for that long. But I will say that it also evolves. You know, back then it was called xeriscaping, and then we went to sustainable landscaping, and now you might be hearing the term regenerative landscaping. A lot of the same principles. It's just that we evolve because now, of course, our landscapes need to be working harder than ever, you know, with the climate change and all of the everything that's involved in having a beautiful, water-wise, and eco-friendly landscape. So let's get started. I do want to start with saying in here, I know this works, but it's not very bright. I'll just say right here. Resources. There's a list of resources that will be provided to you. Now, this is going to be available on the website because it's 6 pages. So the links that you see here are all going to be here. And that way you can take your time to go through them. But what we also have for you today is a handout, which will be on the website, that has the basic steps of what I will be talking about. And then to help you assess what you have or determine what you might want to do in each of these principles that you'll learn about, the fundamentals, you can have a checklist. And you can get that today, and you can also have that on the website, okay? So we are going to talk first about creating a plan, and this was in the description, the fundamentals of water-wise approach, and then strategies for building resilient landscapes. They just don't happen on their own in our communities. They might be better equipped out in the country, you know, forests and so forth, but here we've had a lot of change, and so we need to follow these strategies. And the priorities in doing this: soil health, healthy soil, healthy plants. RPRP, right plant, right place, right purpose or function. And then also plant water needs and how to hold on to your water, meaning keeping it on your site. And I'll share with you strategies for doing that. And of course, efficient irrigation, you know, because we are using, for the most part, potable drinking water for our landscapes. So we need to be reducing that. We know these are tough times, right? They're really tough times. It's a balancing act, not only for our gardens, for all garden life, for all creatures, and yes, for us as well. So we're having to adapt. Good morning, welcome in. And so it's no longer about if we're going to have a drought or if we're going to have a really rainy season or if we're going to not. It's just about when. We are in California. California will have these conditions. And of course, as we know, fires. I live up in Cool. Does anyone know where Cool is? Yeah, so I live up in Cool, but I work all over the region. And actually, I've worked throughout the state at times. But I'm on a fire watch all the time. I have an app that I get ding, 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 you know, so, but it happens in our urban and suburban settings as well, as you can see on the news frequently. So it's up to us now. Let's create a resilient, vibrant, easy care landscape. And I'll start with these fundamentals. So this wheel has 7 fundamentals for a water-wise approach. We also call it river-friendly landscaping, and that's because the water comes off the mountains, right? Comes down from the sky off the mountains, in the streams, in the lakes, in the rivers, and so forth. Our properties are like a little mini watershed, and so that water eventually will go off of our property and go into the streams and into the rivers and so forth. And with it, take pollutants. So another good reason to keep water on our property. So when I say plan with purpose, in my mind, there's at least 2 kinds of planning. So I'm going to show you today a plan like you see up on the left-hand side there. You can create a plan that's got all the detail, that's to scale and plant names and all that. Or your plan might be a sketch, or your plan might just be a list. You know, it's like a checklist, like as I was showing you, that you can decide what you want to do. It's in your hands to decide, and you know, everything, big or small, can make a difference. So if you wanted to start with a plan, you might go to the county assessor's office and you could probably obtain that for your property, a site plan, plot plan they call it. Or you could do measurements and take one. I love using Google Earth because it's so sophisticated. You can go in and get what your property looks like. And then I would just take a few measurements to make sure that it's accurate. And then start asking you and your family. You've got goals, you've got objectives, you've got a budget, you know? And so start asking, you know, what are your goals? What kind of money do you have to work on anything? And honestly, it doesn't all have to be expensive. You know, just adding compost, which I'll talk about, is an inexpensive, really great thing that you can do, and you can call it good, right? But investigate, are you gonna stay in your house forever? Is it a new home? You're going to maybe make it a rental someday or something. Are you going to install and care for it, or are you going to hire? And so, and then just observe. I like to observe the property if I can, really for about a year, so I can see in every season what's going on. I made the mistake when I moved into a new home in Elk Grove. Oh, I was fresh out of school and I was gonna do a landscape plan. Well, I lived there about a month and realized that in Elk Grove, you can almost set your clock to it at 5 o'clock every day. The winds come through. And I had all these plants with big leaves and, anyway, they weren't going to work, so I got to do a new plan. But you take this and you could take your plan and say, okay, well, I'm gonna need lawn here. We'll talk about lawns later. I wanna do an edible garden over here. So it just gives you an idea of, what these spaces are. Do you need activities, edibles, just entertaining or relaxing? So one of the very, very top priorities, healthy soil, as I said. And how are you gonna do that? Compost and worm castings, basically worm poop, if you will. And I did want to mention, should have done this in the beginning, that we'll have time for questions at the end, okay? Okay, so, because compost and worm castings provide nutrients to support your soil, the soil life, all of the organisms. It gives them food, it gives them nutrients. And also, it's amazing because when all those microorganisms are working in the soil, they are digesting and they're creating pockets, and their exudates, it's called, is putting soil particles together so that then we get pockets of air so that water and air can move in and through the soil, which is really good for healthy soil. And so it's as simple as spreading an inch or so on the soil surface around your plant and a little bit beyond what's called the canopy. So where the tree comes down like this, or the shrubs canopy, go a little bit beyond that. All you have to do is cover it back up with mulch, and you're gonna water it some, just add some water, and those organisms, you do not need to incorporate it. And I'll talk about that a bit. Those organisms will start coming up and getting all of that compost. They're like, yay, free lunch. So that's all you need to do to start this process. How many of you know what your soil texture is? What's your texture?
Clay.
Clay. Who else said? Clay. Everybody thinks it's clay. Ha ha ha. Loam. Oh, that's bad. Loam is just a great mix of sand, silt, and clay, like right there in the center. And so really we have clay, but it's a matter of how high is the content, because it's really a mix. Our sands are really a mix of all three. So how do you find out what kind of soil texture you have? So you can dig a hole like this, stick a ruler down in there, and as this says, you're going to fill the hole with water, let it fully drain, so that means that the soil around it is getting wet. And then fill it up again and see how fast or slow it drains. And I bet Jace, with loam soil, 1 to 2 inches per hour, he's going to have great drainage. You can also send in, and there's instructions online, and I have on your resource list some soil analysis labs. You can take some soil, a sample, and send it in, and they'll tell you exactly what your texture is. You can ask for organic recommendations if it's lacking something, some nutrient. You also can use a soil probe. This is one of my favorite tools, You can't really use it too well in the summer if you do have soil with high clay content, but you simply put it in the soil, you twist it, you pull it out, and you have a profile, and you can see it right there. It will be, you know, because it's going to, I would do it outside the area of the roots, especially for newer plants, but you can see how far down you go and whether you've got a lot of moisture or not. And then you can also touch it, and that's what the probe is good for. You can take it and touch it, smell it. Does it smell good? Is it really gritty? Is it slimy? Is it sticky? Because as we were saying, you know, back in here, sand feels coarse and gritty. You have silt that's going to be silky smooth when it's wet, and then also sticky when wet for clay. So the jar test, there's links on your resource list for putting soil in a jar, putting water in it, making sure you don't have compost in it and roots and stuff, and you shake, 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 shake for a few minutes, and then you can just set it aside, and the sand being the largest particles, they're going to start dropping out, drop to the bottom, wait another couple of days, and then you can go in and measure, and you'll get a percentage of what your each clay, silt, or sand, what that percentage is, and then you can look on what's called a textural triangle, and I don't have it here, but it has all kinds of percentages and where you can figure out, I have 3 inches or 30%, say, of sand, and then you look at that, and it gets you to that point. So why does it matter? Why does soil texture matter? Well, it's really important relative to how the water moves into and through your soil. As you can see on the left here, sandy soil, those large particles, that water can just go zoom right through it. So if you have a high sandy content soil, so sometimes near the rivers, the Sacramento River, I know in South Sacramento, there's a lot of properties down there with sandy soils, and so they have to water more frequently, but for a few minutes, for shorter periods of time, to take advantage of that water and try to slow it. How do you think you're going to change this? Compost and mulch will help you improve this over time. It's also very critical for determining when and how to irrigate your property, your landscaping, effectively and efficiently. We want that water to go where it's needed, in the soil and around the roots of the plant. We don't want it, directed somewhere else where it's not going to get used. And then, of course, efficiently. So I would say embrace clay. I know it's a hard thing to swallow, but I would embrace clay because you can really take advantage of the water that is in your soil. So this is a construction site up here. This is what you do not want to do with your soil. Now, believe it or not, years ago, we used to say, cultivate, till your soil, it'll be great. Well, we've learned that it's not great because it messes up, it interferes, it breaks up that whole wonderful soil food web, as they call it, down in the soil. All the fungi and everything get disturbed, all the good things. So you really don't want to do that. I will say there might be one exception, and that would be if you have a construction site, a brand new home, because you can be guaranteed that they have compacted the entire property. They've not said, oh, we're just going to compact the footprint of the house. They've compacted everything. So what you could do is take a soil analysis at that time and send it into a lab and say, how much organic matter is in my soil? How healthy or unhealthy is it? And that way you know from the beginning whether you need to do anything or not. And then you also do not want to use salt-based synthetic type fertilizers and pesticides. Those materials will really interfere with the soil health that you have. So, and this is the why. As I was just saying, it damages and it kills all that wonderful soil life. And then also, compacts the soil, reduces movement of air and water again. Again, I'm saying that because it is just so important. So on your property, how do you know, during this planning process, you're going to do some assessing. And I realize you can't read that. This is just for a visual. But you want to know where the water enters your property. Is it only from your roof? Do you have a neighbor that during a rainstorm, some of that water is coming onto your property? You go, yay, I'm going to keep it. And then the other thing could be, where does it leave, you know? And so you want to identify these potential places where you can put swales, rain gardens, and so forth. And I'll show you some examples of what those are. But you can start identifying how you can shape the soil, is what I call it. So, as I said, keep the water on your property and not in the storm drain system. And this is where you're going to start shaping that soil, okay? And I'll talk also here about hardscape. Hardscape is basically concrete, like out here. It's concrete, the water's going to hit it and sheet off or flow off. Hopefully, it could be going into a planted area. Oftentimes, though, like your driveways, it'll go right into the gutter, okay? So you also, in planning, and it's easiest if you're doing a new landscape, you want to have what's called a sleeve underneath the sidewalk or underneath the, I should say, and underneath the driveway. A sleeve would be a pipe. And you have it under there so that if you do things in phases in your landscape, then this lets you add irrigation pipes, add electrical lines for lighting and so forth, and gives you that flexibility and not have to say, oh, I'm going to have to dig up my sidewalk because I've got to get some irrigation over there. Also, when you're shaping the soil, if you have existing trees, you really want to protect the roots. And how many of you here heard the Sacramento Tree Foundation talk not long ago? Okay, because it's very important. The tree's roots are going to come down beyond its canopy, another third at least. So you want to really be careful of the trees. And also using locally sourced materials. What that means is if you're getting flagstone or other materials to use in your landscape, we don't want to spend a lot of energy, gasoline or diesel and so forth, and bringing materials from Canada. One time I found this flagstone that I just loved, but I found out it came from Canada. I could not in my right mind buy something that was going to be trucked in from all that way. So ask, are these things local or not? So here is the main part about how to capture that rain. Keep it on your soil. And you might be saying, it's dry here a lot of the year. We know that, but still, when we do get rain, we have rainy seasons, why not keep that water so it can nurture your soil? And so you're not having to, and keep it moist, you're not having to add potable water. And the other thing is, and I'll show you in the store it part, I'll save that comment for then. But we want to slow it. So even though we have an efficient sprinkler over here, it's not being managed well because the water is still running off and going into the gutter. Ultimately, we are the managers. So we can have all the smart technology in the world, and we do want to trust it, but we also need to understand it and manage it ourselves. Okay, so first, slow it. This is an example. There's a downspout coming here. So the force of the water is going to hit the cobble. That slows it down and lets it move on its way into the creek bed. That's another picture of it. Here is a rain chain that helps to slow the flow of water off the roof. And then it goes into this gravel and these flagstone pavers and can soak into the ground. Here's another example to slow it. If you have a slope, create some terraces like on the left-hand side, because that also gives you more access to your garden, but it also slows down that water and lets it stay in that area longer. This on the right, I wanted to show you some recycled concrete. And so it could have come from an old sidewalk, likely because of the depth of it, came from a driveway, and reuse it. Like one of the 7 principles, reuse it, less to the landfill. And so that's that. On the left is what's called a ledge stone. It's a real chunky, natural stone. All right, let's spread it. So this is one of the examples I was saying. This was a slope. And so what happens with this is, let me see if this works well enough. See right there? There's a depression that has been made. They've dug out the soil and then they've put it here. So this is the basin, and then they're making a berm. And that berm helps to slow the flow of the water and spread it out across your property. And we're seeing someone planting in between those lines there. Spread it with creek beds. So here is another one where it's going all across the property. Sometimes you see them, as with a couple of those pictures, where it just came down to the sidewalk. And this is really great, showing how you can plant it. And what I do with creek beds, because we do have dry months, is I usually do put drip irrigation in those creek beds in case we need to provide a little supplemental water. So let's sync it now. I love this website. And it's on your resources, of course, but it's so great. And we have a lot of good local resources as well. And what I will say that's so important with resources is consider the source and consider where it's coming from. You know, is it from the Northeast, Southeast, up here in Washington? All very pertinent information. There might be some plants in there that would not be great for us, but it's amazing how many plants in this area are appropriate in other areas. So I just encourage you to take a look at that. This is what a rain garden looks like if you're looking up above. And so it's basically a depression. It's very simple. It's a depression in the soil, and you can learn how to size it from that guide, because it depends on how much water is flowing to that rain garden. Oftentimes you'll have the roof, and you'll direct the water with a pipe or a cobble stream bed to the rain garden, and it will go in right there. So there's the entry, and then the water flows in here, and you have a little area that's slightly lower, so that if we have rain for 3 days and it's full, it will naturally flow out of there. And then you could create, if you have this berm, you could have that where the water goes out there and then still continues to slow in your landscape. So that's really cool. And then there's these 3 zones. So the bottom is an area where you want plants that can really take standing water for a little while, and because that's the lowest point. And then on the side, you'll have plants that will take water, but they don't want to be standing in it. And then at the top are other plants that help to kind of make that transition and make it look natural, that you're planting out into the rest of your garden. And one thing that I would say is important to understand is that the water does not stand there. The water, because it's sized properly for the amount of water coming in, it doesn't stay for a long period of time. A day, maybe 2, and then it's gone. You know, it is soaked in or flowed off. So this is an example of a rain garden in the winter or fall, and this is in the summer. You don't even know that it's there. And this is what's interesting to me, and it's not a new statistic, but if you think about 1 inch of rain from just a 1,000 square foot roof, it yields 623 gallons of rainwater. So if you were to capture that, then in the middle of the summer, if there are water restrictions, you know, anything like that, then you have that water to use. Here are some materials to help you sink the water into the ground. So this is a paver, but what's different about this is it's not grouted in. There's no concrete between the lines where each paver is. And so there's a subsurface of usually 2 types of gravel, and then those pavers go on. And so when the water comes down, it goes around the pavers and can soak into the ground. And you know, you also have things like this. And here, the flagstone. And flagstone is kind of a loose term. It doesn't always have to be that color. Materials that are like that, they can be a lot of different colors, are considered flagstone. This could have been just a concrete staircase, and what's happened is they've used these beautiful, chunky, natural steps here, and then have gravel in between. Again, all possibilities for keeping that soil on your property. Let's store it. This is my favorite. Well, one of my favorites. Because the nice thing is that you don't have to use just one thing, you know? And you might be thinking, well, I don't have room for a tank. And that's why I think it's so cool that these slim tanks have been developed so they can go in those narrower sides of your property. And as you can see on this, what I wanted to show you, there's a screen on top. They're always closed, or they have a screen so that you don't get mosquitoes in there and you don't have to worry about that. I capture 2,300 gallons of rainwater every year, and I treat it like gold. I do have a deck, and I'm on the side of a hill, so I have all these big tanks ranging from 550 to 1,100 gallons. So I'm a little greedy when it comes to rainwater. All right, some other tips. And the next section, we need efficient irrigation, as I've said. So you can make a little drawing like this and make notes on it. Where is your water meter? Okay, where's your water meter? Where's the main line that comes onto your property? Is it off of an alley that's behind your house, or is it at the front of the street? Where? And think about, this is a valve, so this is a bank of valves. Think about where the valves are, and you want to note those. Where's your controller, if you have one, your irrigation timer? Is it outside somewhere? Is it in your garage? Do you want to call for a waterwise house call and get a free one to upgrade? And so you want to note all of that and consider where the valves are located, number one, because a lot of times they're just conveniently located right outside your front door, but is that really appealing? People will tend to put a big shrub there or something, and then you have to dig through the shrub to try to, work with the valves. And then what's the age of your system? If it's 20 years old, it's often easier and less expensive to just abandon it and start with new pipes in the ground, the PVC pipes and so forth, and new drip lines and so forth. So, efficient irrigation. How many of you have put these rotary type nozzles in your sprinklers, or you have sprinklers with them? You have? Yes, I love them. They're very efficient. Something to know about them, and so if you have a sprinkler, there's usually these rotary nozzles, which is this, that you can just put in, insert that into your sprinkler body. And they put out larger droplets of water so that and at a slower rate, and it goes around like in a little fan with all these little, like this. And I like to put on music and let it just kind of listen to it. But it's great because it applies the water more slowly than our traditional sprinklers that just blast the water out. Something to know about that is that you might have to water longer. So that's when, because it's slower, right? So that's when I recommend turning on your system, run it, and see how long it takes for runoff to start. If it's 15 minutes, then you want to do a cycle and soak. So this might not be a new term to you, but you let it run for 5 minutes, then it's off for an hour or so, run another 5 minutes, off for an hour, etc. And so you really want to keep that water on your property, right? This buffer area I really like because even the best designed and installed systems may have what's called overspray. There might be some of that water spraying over. And if you have this buffer zone of plants, for example, or it could be some of that material that I was saying is permeable, some gravel with pavers and so forth, that water, though, is going into that buffer zone. So, two different types of drip. On the left is what's called point source. So you've got this black tube that an individual emitter gets poked into it, and then you can see where the water is coming out. That would be for more sparse planting, if you're not going to have the whole area covered. However, this is what's called line source. It's for dense plantings, and so that tubing has emitters built right into it. And the spacing varies, 12, 18, 24, and you also will space them as this is considered a grid. And so generally you have the same amount of space between the lines as you have the emitters. And so I like to use this because roots will go where there's water. If there's not water, they're not going to go. Now, what you can do to be very efficient is have an area with a drip grid, and then you might have some solid poly tubing to connect it to another area of the drip grid, so you're not having to grid the entire area. That's a really fancy example of an irrigation design. The main point I want to make too is these are the plants, and you want to have emitters on both sides of the plants, not just one line. And so even if you have current landscape that you want to use this drip system, then you can go in and put a line on each side of those plants. And the numbers indicate hydrozones. And so we'll talk about that in just a minute. So softscape, those are the plants. That's the fun part. So in your planning, this is the softscape. You're going to want to give these plants room to grow. And I know it's really hard to imagine. So if you see that on the label or in your resource, this plant is going to get between 4 and 6 feet wide, I would at least give it 5 feet before I put in the next plant. And if you're in an area like, well, like some areas of South Sacramento, Arden area, the soil there is gorgeous. And you can put in a plant and it will get larger than what it should, but mainly because of growing conditions and the soil is just so wonderful. But for the most part, you just want to make sure that you put them in at full size, and it will look sparse for a while, but that's okay. And if you don't like that sparse look and you think it's too much mulch, then you might think about using some plants like perennials that live maybe for a year or two while things are growing in, but then they've outlived their natural life. And so at least it fills in some of those areas. But it's also nice just to have areas that your eyes can rest and where there's not always something going on. When we think about beginning with the end in mind, there was a quote near the beginning, and that is, when you're thinking about planning and what you want to do, what is your goal, as I said? Where do you want to take it? With irrigation, it's the same thing. When I started working with a colleague for a developer to do some plans, and we had to meet certain regulations, I would always say, okay, Lori, this is what I've got planned. Is this going to work? Are we going to meet what's called the water budget? Are we going to be able to, keep our landscape within the amount of water that we're going to be allowed to use? So I had to keep that in mind. Plant water use needs, as you can see, I've lined through high at the top because high would be for like fruit trees and edibles, and that's okay. Those are specific areas. But I really encourage everybody, and this is the coast redwood. Coast is the operative word here. They really don't belong here, but we have so many of them. And I feel bad for them because they take a lot of water. And so anyway, those are the high. And then we have moderate down here. And what that means is these are going to be plants that generally need to be watered throughout the year, and they'll need some supplemental water. And there's not generally months, though, that you can just turn it off for these moderate water use plants. For low, these are going to be more of your Mediterranean type and your local California native plants, and I'll speak to that in a moment. But California native plants that really already are adapted to our climate and conditions, and so they will do very well here. There are some natives that, and let me add one thing, and that is with these Mediterranean type and California native plants, during the summer, generally they just like to rest, right? And that's why one of the complaints, if you will, about California natives is, oh, it looks so bad in the summer. We're going to talk about a strategy to avoid that. But, we want to think about it. So in the fall, when it's cooler, that's when they're really growing. And that's one of the reasons why they need water in the fall. And then here, this is a flannel bush. It's a native that if you water it in the summer, it will say, bye-bye, I'm dying. It doesn't want any water whatsoever. Okay, I know that there's a big long list here. And I know that having a separate valve for each of these types of trees, plants, edibles, and so forth might not be possible. But if you can at least shoot for having your trees all on the same valve, because they want to be watered differently from your lawn, right? The lawn's roots are not very deep. The tree's roots, we want that water to go deep and out. And just like Citrus Heights Water District has provided these buckets, that is one strategy that Sacramento Tree Foundation has talked about, where you can take these buckets, fill them with water, and place them around the root zone of the tree because they want it to go in deep. And so, or is it deeply? Deeply. So you might be limited to the number of valves you can have, but think about that because that way you can schedule it and manage it for the length of time that it needs to run. This example of a hydrozone, so all of the blue plants have one water use classification. And the green, those are all one water use classification. Do you think that's hydrozoned properly? So look at this. In this area, we have blue, green, pink, red, pink, green. So that's a real big mix of water use classifications that's making it really hard to manage. You're going to have one group of plants that's going to love it and one group of plants that's not. That results in costs, more money, wasting water, and so forth. So you really want to avoid this. And if you already have some of this going on, then you might think about, well, what plants might I be willing to remove? Not trees and not large shrubs, but what smaller ones maybe can I remove or transplant and put the proper plants in there with the water use classification that you need. Now I know we've talked about rotary nozzles already and runoff, but I want to talk about lawn a minute because it is so important how we water them and what the size is. Is there a need for this size? Is there an activity, football, something going on or not? So think about that because it really is not efficient. And this runoff over here is just going to take all those pollutants into our waterways. How about this little strip? How many of you have a strip like this at your house or in your neighborhood? Yeah. And so that lawn, we always are trying to water it without having runoff, and having it go where it's not needed. And so if we take that strip out and instead put plants in that can give us year-round cover, put in some stepping stones, so now people, if you park out at the street, you have a nice way to get over onto the sidewalk and so forth. And so, all right, I won't ask for a raise of hands here, but synthetic turf. The reason that I encourage you strongly not to use it is it's hot. Hot. You can measure the temperature. It's hot. People will leave their sprinklers in to cool it off. They will also, when it's installed, there's compaction. We don't want that because what does that do? Takes the airspace and out of our soil and doesn't let the water run through it. And just a note about this is that those trees are not properly staked. Okay, right plant, right place, right purpose. So this is what our area looks like much of the year. I'm just doing a check here. Okay. So we want to take these considerations into mind when we're thinking about what plants we are going to install. And there's many resources. So we're mainly in region 9 and 14 here. And you want to select your plants based on these requirements, water and sun, right? The soil type, we've already talked about that. Are they deciduous, meaning do they lose their leaves? Are they evergreen? They keep them year round and definitely adapted to our climate. So California native plants, I will make a plug for them. It's so important to be using California native plants. They can use 60 to 90% less water, but keep in mind all native plants are not low water use, as I think I've said. Some misconceptions, ugly during the summer, they're dry, etc. You can avoid that by planting, in your plant list, have 60 to 90% of those plants be evergreen natives. And that way they do look good year round, okay? And then we do want them to be in harmony with our climate and other local plants, and you can visit calscape.org to find out. You can put in your address and find out exactly a whole big list of plants that are native to your area. And then absolutely lower maintenance, especially when they're selected and installed and cared for properly. We want to select plants. We've got to take care of those pollinators. And, all of our ecosystems are connected. It's not like there's just this here and that there. Everything is connected, just like the waterwise approach principles. We need to keep all those 7 principles in mind while we're doing this. But we have a very important role to play, because especially in developed areas, there's big developments of houses, and these corridors of plants and trees especially have been removed to accommodate the building. And so it's up to us to start bringing these landscapes and these plants back that will help to support the pollinators and all the beneficials. And so there's a lot of information here. These resources on the bottom left are on your resource list. And habitat, it's not just plants. Habitat means, number one, local California natives and non-natives. There are enthusiasts that want 100% natives. I'm one that I like both. I will sometimes do one hydrozone that's all natives, another that's a mix, and mix it up a little. But they all have the same water and sun requirement. Because like a grevillea plant gets these red flowers on it, it's not native, but I'll tell you, the hummingbirds love it. And so I believe in that. But we need to be providing a year-round food source, and also varying heights, because when we think about habitat, it's where these creatures can be high for safety or be building their nests and so forth. Some do build nests and so forth in the soil as well. But we need to keep all of that in mind. And then also, it's wonderful that many, many more plants than before are now pest and disease resistant, which makes our job a lot easier. And also the beneficials, we can let the natural beneficial insects like lady beetles, ladybugs, come in and do their job. Group plants together. So don't just have one of this and one of this and one of this and one of this. For example, if you're planting the milkweed, there's been research that if you plant it in a grouping, either like in the middle of your planting area and then around it have some mulch, or else at the edge of your landscape, apparently the monarchs can find these plants a lot more easily. So it's very important to think about that. Let's not forget about color. It comes color, texture, beautiful flowers. Take all of that into consideration. So the right plant, right place. For trees, I feel bad for trees. Even though there's a lot of information out there, I still see them being planted improperly. And an arborist colleague of mine says that a tortured tree, when young, does not mature into a beautiful tree. And that is true. They usually die, or they're misshapen or whatever. PG&E has great information about how high, tall the tree can grow underneath the utility lines. Place your trees, deciduous trees, the ones that drop leaves, on the south and southwest side of your home. And that is so you get shade in the summer, and then the leaves drop, and in the winter, you get to enjoy the warmth of the sun. These days, we truly have to be careful and mindful of solar panels, because we can't block a neighbor's solar panels with our trees. So we need to take that into consideration. Great resources here too. Plant shade. Trees and plants are all wonderful for absorbing carbon dioxide, CO2, from the atmosphere into their leaves, their stems, their trunks, and their roots. Those roots are then in the ground, and then the soils with this organic matter and beneficial organisms will get to work to sequester or absorb that that carbon in the soil. So it's really an important strategy. So what we're doing with our landscapes, with all the plants and planting more trees, we're helping the issue, and we're helping our landscapes to be more resilient. We're going to talk just for a couple minutes of sun. So plants that want full sun, pay attention to that. 10 hours a day, really tough conditions. Shade, like this bush anemone, has to have afternoon shade. So when something says part shade, then pay attention to that. Morning sun is usually lovely, but then if it's more under a canopy of a tree or on the side of a house, the north side that gets shade, that will be much happier. Here's my top tips for plants. Select plants based on their place them where they can grow to their natural shape so you don't have to shear them. When you shear and put plants into balls and squares, you're basically creating a lot of open wounds where the plant is just going to be inviting pests and disease. Then these cuts are going to get a flush of new growth. Then we have more bad bugs coming in to eat that nice fleshy growth. So we want to keep that together. Consider not planting 100% in every single inch of your landscape. Think about having groups and then places to walk between the plants. Islands, they call them sometimes. And also that will help you when you do need to do some service. You need to care for those plants. You need to get in there somehow. You don't want to go, oh, okay, I'm trying to get in here to take care of this plant. So think about that. And mulch. Mulch has got to be in your plan. This dude was in my front yard. Is that wild? But what I'm really trying to point out are the wonderful leaves from the oak trees around it. Leave the leaves, okay? If you use materials like this, hot. That's why when I see so much rock and cobble, it's hot. It absorbs rock, it absorbs heat, gives off heat, is not healthy, makes the soil temperature even hotter. And so that's what we want up there, not here. Can somebody give me a few reasons for why, what the benefits are of mulch? Other things than what I've said? So mulch helps to retain soil moisture, doesn't evaporate as much, helps to temper the temperature, helps to modulate it, makes it more friendly, if you will, for the organisms and the roots. It helps to reduce weeds, to have a nice 3 to 4 inch layer, and replenish it. Yes, mulch breaks down, so, over time, so we do need to add more. So there's many, many benefits. Oh, what did I do? So in the end, here's a plan. It could be very simple like this. And there's what's called an elevation. If you're artistic, you could look at a picture of the plant and draw it to see what that looks like. This was our plan that we've been looking at all through the different stages. That's got a lot on it. I mean, it's got the botanical name, the common name, what the mature size of the plant is, what the water use is. You don't need all of that. It could be something very, very simple like that. But this is a rendering of what that landscape would look like when it was mature. You can go on to this website on the resource list, and there are 4 plans: landscape plans, irrigation plans, plant lists, 75 plants with full profiles, all they need, their water, their sun, and care, as well as videos and instruction about irrigation. So it's really cool. In summary, purposeful planning. So we want to use those fundamental principles, right? And I know this is a lot of information to absorb, and that's why I wanted you to have the resources, have the handouts, and just read through it and digest it a little bit at a time. Pick one area. I want to improve my soil. I'm going to add compost and put mulch. So think about that. Healthy soil, healthy plants. We want to support the garden life. And we need irrigation that matches what we're doing. So if we're going to have lawn, we need those rotary type nozzles. There are some enthusiasts, native plant enthusiasts, that like to use overspray for native plants. And my question there is, if I'm using overspray and there's mulch, how much water do I have to put down to get through the mulch to actually get to the soil for the plants? So that's an unanswered question for me. And we've talked about the storm drain system, everything having a function. And then, of course, it's beautiful. These landscapes will be less maintenance, and you will not be tied to them to be out there every single week working and caring for them. This will be our next workshop on the 19th. So this is going to have more about the do's and don'ts in your landscapes and garden. And I'll have some tools and things to show you and tips and methods for caring for your landscapes. So with that said, how about some questions? Anybody? Okay, you were first. Yes.
I've heard that native plants like the clay, the soil, the native soil, so that it's maybe not so good to put too much compost?
So she's heard that native plants don't necessarily like, they want natural soil or the native soil. And so putting compost in might not be the best thing to do. And that in part is, yes, absolutely true. One thing that's interesting though, especially in our developed areas, is that the soil's no longer native, where we are. And so that's where a soil test to see how much soil biology there is, how much organic matter is in the soil, because native plants they definitely don't always like compost in the hole, but on the soil surface is not necessarily a bad thing. It's helping, the native plants as well as the soil. So that is one of those it depends kind of answers, but I will say, and I'll talk about that in the next workshop, proper planting goes a really long way, and it's really hard when we have clay soils. We just want to go, I'm just going to do a hole and plop that plant in there, and it's not big enough and so forth. And we don't want to be adding fertilizers and anything else to the soil. The only thing that we might add is that compost or worm castings. That answered okay?
Yeah, and did you say, are there like home soil test kits or?
You can get soil test kits at box stores and garden centers and so forth. You can also take a soil sample and send it off to a lab to find that out. So yeah, there are soil test kits like that.
Okay. And you don't recommend like buying a bag of soil and mixing it in?
The question is, I don't recommend buying bags of soil and mixing it in, no. Okay. Unless you are positive that there's something going on with your soil, that you need to amend it that much, no. Then use the soil that is there, unless you know it's not healthy. Another question, yes?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you have a local source for native plants, because I know like Green Acres is probably what most of us think of, and they don't have that many.
No, they don't. Yeah, they try. Yeah, so that was the question, where to source, where to get native plants. So the UC Arboretum has plant sales. I have a link on here, but UC Arboretum definitely has plant sales that you can go to. There also, it's really cool that the CNPS, California Native Plant Society, for the Sacramento chapter, they have a growing area. Does anybody know about soil-borne farms down off Rancho Cordova area? They do potting and propagating, and they have plant sales as well. And so if you go on to CNPS, the calscape.org, they will also have a list of nurseries that they have surveyed to see who carries native plants. But you'd need to find out, if they do still have them. Sometimes it's seasonal, and just availability. So that's a good source as well, okay? Okay, another question? Yes?
I'm not sure I know the web address she keeps referring to. Is your website, the Citrus Sites on Street?
No. What exactly?
You mean Calscape?
Your resources and things are.
Yeah, so,
Today.
yeah.
We have a handout at the end.
So, yeah, so this is a resources list that it's all organized, like books, Firewise landscaping, community gardens to go to, irrigation, landscape designs, movies, pest management.
Thank you.
Thanks for clarifying that or asking that question. So yeah, we'll definitely have that. Was there another question? And do we have a raffle in a few minutes?
Yeah, we do have a raffle.
Okay. Whoa, okay. One question and then I'll come to you, okay? All right.
I've tried in the past to get somebody to create a swale for me, but it seems like nobody ever seems to be familiar with the process. Is there a contractor specialty that you look for to get that work done?
Well, so the question was, she's wanted, yeah. It's one of our challenges. But she's asking about having a swale and she's wanted it, but the contractors don't necessarily know how to do that, right? And so one is, I've taken pictures, and actually showed them what I want, and that has worked very well. So it's mostly, like you can go to the CLCA, and at the end of the resource list, there's a list of organizations and, ways to get help. And knowing what you're looking for goes a long way when you're talking with someone and you say, do you do this? Can you do this? Tell me how you would do this. You know, it is difficult. That's one of our challenges, and that's why the next workshop is largely about the DIY part, because we're finding that we have to know about a lot of this ourselves. For myself, I have a gardener now. Thank you. So for myself, he did lawn mowing and his blower. And I said, can I show you how I would like my plants cared for, etc.? And he says, oh, it's going to cost you more money and it's going to take more time. Well, guess what? It doesn't, because I have my list of things that I want to be done, and he gets done what he needs to be done like that. So I keep getting more of my work done. So it's a matter of communication and sharing and talking. We'll have more information at the next workshop. One more, I think she was next here, okay?
So you talk about mulch. Are you a fan of this arborist wood chip?
So, talked about mulch. Am I a fan of this arborist? Thank you for knowing about that. The arborist chips or the wood chips. My first is an arborist mulch. So basically, arborist tree companies have taken a tree and they have cut it down and chipped it. Oftentimes it's not diseased, sometimes it is. But you can get those chips, and they're great because there's different sizes, so they break down at different times, the materials. The leaves will break down faster than the stems and so forth. And so, yes, it's wonderful for that reason.
I have a second question.
Okay, let me say one other thing then first, okay? And so then you can get wood chips. I like to get what's called walk-on mulch. And so it's wood materials that have been reprocessed, and they're cut up in different sizes and so forth, okay? So we need to get our raffle going. Do you have a quick question? And you have a quick question, then we'll end that.
I like arborist wood chips, but they deliver 20 yards.
Yes.
I can't handle that.
Yeah.
And I would like Citrus Heights Water District to have a spot where we could go with our little bins and get them. Have you ever considered that?
We've talked about it, actually.
We'll do it.
Do you do a mulch mayhem?
We don't do mulch.
Okay.
We did it 1 year.
Okay.
And it was,
Mayhem?
yeah. But we discuss it, and also the Silver Ranch Community Garden.
Oh, yeah.
I've reached out to them because they.
Yes, I have.
Yeah.
You have to belong to.
Ah, okay.
Oh, well, that might have changed because I know they have a big. They had an order. It's not mulch, but it's topsoil and they have it's a sign for the whole community. So that's something to check on. But they haven't had a mulch order in a while, and I know at the end of it, at first I think it was just for the community garden, but at the end they started opening it up to people to come.
Well, I wish you would really consider that.
Yeah.
I have a lot of elder people that would love to do this.
What time of year is mulch mayhem again?
It's usually March-ish.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll discuss it again.
Yeah, and that's where you can drive up and
Yeah.
get like a yard and,
Yeah, please do, and CC my boss.
yeah. One last question, sir.
Oh, I was just curious. You said you had all these, what we used to call them rain barrels.
Mm-hmm.
So you accumulate all this different water barrels all over your property.
Yeah.
How do you utilize that? Are they hooked together in one system, or
Yeah.
is that gravity fed? Or
Yeah,
how do
so
you-
he's asking about my rain barrels. So I have 3 rain barrels that are all attached with big pipes. So one will fill and go down to the other and so forth. I have 2 freestanding ones and then 2 more that are attached. And so there's a spigot thing, there's something to turn it on at the bottom. So the downspout comes in, there's a lid on it, and then it does get gravity fed. And I have a spigot hooked up to it that I can then, fill my buckets with and so forth. But the other is that I can also drop like a sump pump down into it so that I can get pressure enough for sprinklers and all of that. And so they can be freestanding or they can be hooked together and so forth. Okay? Thanks. I know, I love it. Thank you. Thanks for coming, everybody.